I'm going to have to limit my definition of nuisance pests as we can spend several modules discussing these animals. We have previously discussed nuisance pests as pests that attack landscape plants but pose little risk to the long-term health of the plants. I have used the terms cosmetic pests and nuisance pests when discussing many of the foliage-eating pests and sucking pests. In this module, my idea of a nuisance pest is one that lives in and around our landscapes but interact with humans and are therefore considered human nuisance pests. This includes a variety of home-invading arthropods, biting and stinging insects, and parasites like fleas and ticks. The list of nuisance pests is quite long. Among the home invaders, ants, stink bugs, millipedes, and spiders are ones that are rarely tolerated when they enter the living spaces of humans. Some ants are able to inhabit cavities of walls, basements, and cabinets, but many others live outside and come inside when the availability of food and water outside diminishes. Millipedes and isopods feed on decaying plant material but will seek cool and moist places to hide when it gets hot and dry outside. Spiders, ground beetles, and centipedes are predators that often end up inside as they search for foods. Wasps, especially social ones, often sting people when their nests are disturbed or threatened. Mosquitoes breed in water located in our landscapes, then annoy us with their bites and the potential to transmit diseases. Finally, urban habitats can support ticks and fleas, which are important transmitters of disease. We have discussed how ants can inhibit our ability to control honeydew-producing pests like aphids, tree hoppers, and scales. Many species of ants can live inside human buildings where they have space, access to water, and foods. Other species build their nests in soil and they have to have access to soils in order to survive. However, the workers of these ants can come inside and become a nuisance. Unfortunately, landscape managers are often asked by homeowners if treatments can be made outside to control the ants. In fact, this is one of the better approaches, but understand that in most states, treatments of pests outside to prohibit them from entering a building is covered by a license that most pest management professionals are required to obtain. Licenses covering ornamental plant care and turfgrass care do not cover these home-invading pests, so the correct license must be obtained in order to manage ants and other home invaders. In short, you can control ants if your intent is to keep the ants from protecting aphids and scales, but you can't control ants if your intent is to keep them out of a building. That requires a different license. As in all pest management, the key to success is proper identification of the pests to be managed. With ants, one will probably need a 20 to 40 power dissecting microscope to properly identify the species. Some of the larger species can be identified with a 10 power hand lens, but the smaller ant species can be pretty difficult to see. All ants have elbowed antennae. The shape of the head, thorax, and abdomen is often of use. All ants have a constriction between the thorax and abdomen, and the narrow constriction is called a petiole. The petiole can have one bump or node or two bumps or nodes. Most ant keys start with you determining if the ants are one-node ants or two-node ants. Two large black species of ants that invade homes are the Carpenter ants and black field ants. The workers of these ants are often 1/4 of an inch to 3/8 of an inch in length, and they enter homes in search of sweets and water. Notice that the carpenter ant worker has a smoothly rounded thoracic dorsum, while the black field ant has an uneven profile. Black field ants live in the soil, while carpenter ants live in tree cavities, rotting wood, in old wood piles, or in cavities found in buildings. Pavement ants and acrobat ants are common two-node ants that invade homes, and their workers are about the same size, being about 3/16 of an inch in length. Pavement ant workers have the exoskeleton covered with grooves, while the acrobat ant's exoskeleton is smooth. Notice that the acrobat ant's abdomen is attached to the petiole by its upper surface. In top view, the pavement ant's abdomen is oval in outline, while the acrobat ant has a heart-shaped abdomen. Pavement ants have their colonies in soil, while acrobat ants live in tree or building cavities. Carpenter ants, in a sense, are landscape tree pests, as they often establish colonies in trees that have heartwood rot issues. However, founding queens can also establish colonies in wood piles or in landscape timbers that have been attacked by wood rot fungi. This ant establishes an initial colony when a mated queen finds a place where she can chew a small cavity in rotting wood or under the loose bark of a dead branch or piece of firewood. Here she rears a small brood using her own fat stores and recycling her wing muscles. If the first brood of workers is produced, they will leave the founding nest to find insects and honeydew for food. These workers also enlarge the nest cavity by chewing away wood and throwing it out of the nest, which looks a bit like fine sawdust. Over time, these colonies can have thousands of workers, and the nest can completely hollow out the interior of trees that have had wood rot. Large colonies will also produce satellite colonies in other cavities, including building wall voids, soffit spaces, and spaces under siding. They usually do this where there is a moisture problem or access to foam insulation that is easily chewed away to make their cavities. After hearing about carpenter ant biology, you can imagine that managing this ant can be complicated, especially when you have a large colony with multiple satellite colonies. Controlling the satellite colony only will kill workers and brood, but not the queen that resides only in the primary nest. Management should include attempts to keep the ants from gaining access to building voids. One should also try to locate the primary nest that contains the queen. Primary colonies can be treated through injection with an insecticide, but baits are often used as these are picked up by the workers and distributed throughout the colony and eventually to the queen. Again, remember that carpenter ant control is really done under a general pest control license. Pavement ants are one of the most common species found in urban landscapes. Most lawns and landscapes will contain several colonies of these ants. The ant is a generalist feeder, eating dead insects and collecting honeydew. It is an obligate ground nesting species, but the foragers will commonly enter a building through tiny cracks and crevices in the foundations and walls. Inside, it will forage for sweets, fats, and oils. This ant often has colony fights when landscape colonies begin to overlap in their foraging territories. Such ant battles can be alarming to a homeowner who discovers thousands of these ants on their sidewalk or driveway. It is best to just leave them alone as they're killing each other. After an hour or two, the battling ants will return to their nests, not to battle again until probably the next summer. We don't have time to completely cover all the complexities of ant control in this module. The most important thing to remember is that most pest management professionals have turned to baits as the most efficient method to manage ants. However, not all baits are the same. Some baits are designed to be attractive to insect-eating ants, and others are more attractive to honeydew-eating ants. Other baits contain a combination of proteins, fats, oils, and sugars that make them attractive to a wide range of species. In short, be sure to select a bait that lists the ant of concern. Dealing with moisture problems, water sources, and honeydew-producing insects can also help manage ant populations in the landscape. Ground beetles are considered by entomologists to be beneficial predators. These are common inhabitants of tree and shrub beds as well as turf grass. Both the adults and larvae are often active predators that are constantly on the move. Landscapes that have excessive mulch layers and dense, thatchy turf often have an abundance of ground beetles that are normally feeding on other insects and invertebrates that are also using those habitats. Because ground beetles are constantly moving, they often find access to buildings and homes through gaps under doors or around windowsills. Inspecting and maintaining door seals is one of the best methods of keeping these invaders out of the home. Millipedes and centipedes are arthropods that have a head and trunk body plan. Millipedes have 2 pairs of legs per visible body segment, and they tend to creep rather slowly. Centipedes have 1 pair of legs per visible body segment, and they run rather rapidly. Millipedes generally feed on fungi and decaying plant matter. Centipedes are predators that are constantly looking for small prey. Millipedes can be very round, or they may appear to have a flat upper surface. Centipedes are always flattened, and they have the front legs modified into fangs that are capable of subduing small arthropods. Neither one damages plants, but their presence can be a real nuisance. Both will also enter buildings that are surrounded by turf, flower beds, and mulch. There are many types and species of spiders that can be found in the landscape. The vast majority are quite small, but the larger wolf, grass funnel web, and forest Dolomites fishing spiders can cause concern in those who fear spiders in general. Jumping spiders are small but very active daytime predators. Some spiders make webs, and the orb weavers are famous for their complicated webs that are used for capturing flying insects. Treatments are not normally warranted, as all spiders are considered to be beneficial predators. Again, inspecting door and window seals for gaps and repairing them can help stop home invasion by these predators. Spiders also accumulate and build webs around night lights, where they capture the insects. Having night lights with motion detectors or on limited time switches can help stop attracting insects that the spiders are feeding upon. There are many solitary predatory wasps that can inhabit landscapes. The cicada killer is a solitary wasp of impressive proportions. Adults can be 1 to 2 inches in length, with females being larger than the males. They are generally black in color with white patches on the abdomen. As their name implies, cicada killer females dig deep burrows and use annual cicadas as food for their larvae. Unfortunately, males, which can't sting, are quite territorial. When a human or dog or other animal enters their territory, they will buzz loudly back and forth and even physically dive bomb and strike you. But since they don't have a stinger, this behavior is merely bluffing intimidation. Ground nesting bees are common pollinators that utilize open ground. These are most active in the spring, and dozens to hundreds can occur in colonies in a yard. They are harmless, and females won't sting unless one tries to pick them up. Social wasps are common inhabitants of urban landscapes. There are a couple of species of yellow jackets that often build their nests in ground cavities. Overwintered yellow jacket queens search for initial cavities in which to begin their nests. These can be spaces that form around landscape stones and timbers, where turfgrass sod has been poorly flattened down, or in old rabbit or mouse burrows. Once the colony has been started by the queen, new workers will continue to use their mouthparts to excavate soil to enlarge the cavity. By the end of the season, a single yellow jacket nest can be roughly 8 to 12 inches in diameter, and it can contain 5,000 to 20,000 female workers. Each worker is equipped with a powerful stinger. Unfortunately, the nest opening may be a rather small hole in the ground. In this image, you can see such a nest opening next to a golf course irrigation control platform. Apparently, there was a cavity under the platform that was being used. In the other image, you can see the brood combs and a pile of workers that were recovered. The smaller pile of wasps are some new queens that have been produced by the end of the summer. Wasp control is best achieved by purchasing a bee suit, which allows you to treat the wasps without getting stung. Mosquitoes are common in urban landscapes. These pests have complicated life cycles where the eggs, larvae, and pupae need aquatic habitats. Adult male mosquitoes feed on nectar, and females can survive on nectar also. but the females need a blood meal in order to produce their eggs. Most mosquitoes don't travel far from where the larvae and pupae are located. Hence, landscapes with a lot of mosquitoes generally have standing water issues. Standing water can be roadside ditches that aren't draining properly, roof gutters that are clogged, or even poorly maintained water features in the backyard. An old plastic bucket, sandbox, or pet water dish can produce dozens to hundreds of mosquitoes in a couple of weeks. There is much fear of mosquitoes because of their ability to transmit diseases. Females that feed on an infected bird or a dog that had heartworm can pick up the disease and then transmit it to another host when the mosquitoes feed again. In most of North America, rboviruses are the most troublesome. These are bird viruses that can be picked up by a mosquito and transmitted to humans and other domestic animals. For our pets, heartworm is a major issue, and this is the reason why pets that are allowed outside should be treated with heartworm preventive medicines. Mosquito-transmitted diseases are difficult to manage. Most have a wild animal reservoir. Most arboviruses have wild birds as their reservoir. When bird-preferring mosquitoes feed on infected birds, they pick up the disease and then transmit it to other birds. When these mosquitoes build up large populations in the summer, they can't find enough birds to attack, so they will turn to alternate hosts and thus infect these alternate hosts with a virus. Most regional health departments monitor mosquito populations, and when certain species are collected and these are carrying dangerous diseases, the health department will implement fogging and other adulticiding treatments. In short, they don't spray for nuisance mosquitoes, but they spray for mosquitoes that have the potential of transmitting a disease. Note that in many states, mosquito control implementation requires a special license. Before the advent of topical flea treatments for cats and dogs, flea control was an annual treatment in many lawns, especially in southern states. Remember that fleas are blood-sucking parasites of birds and mammals. In urban areas, the most common flea is the cat flea, which will also infest dogs. It is only the adult flea that bites and sucks blood from its host. Eggs are laid on the host, but these will quickly drop off of the body. The larvae look like primitive fly larvae, and they feed on organic debris in carpets, pet bedding, or outside in the lawn. In order to pupate, the flea larva needs to eat a droplet of blood. To get this, the adult fleas suck more blood than they need, and the excess is excreted. This dries into small pellets, which also drop from the infested animal. Here's an image of a cat flea that was kept in a vial for several days. When placed on my hand, it immediately began to feed, and you can see that it is already producing a blood fecal pellet. When these droplets dry, the dried blood drops to the carpet or ground where flea larvae can locate them. You can see the small size of the flea larva that is crawling across a piece of newspaper. In most states, outdoor flea controls can be applied by people with a turfgrass or ornamental plant license, but in other states, one has to have a general pest license. Successful flea control requires a coordinated effort where infested pets and places where the pets live are treated. In short, both the adult fleas and the larval fleas need to be managed. Where pets regularly receive preventive flea and tick controls, fleas are usually not a problem. However, if a flea infestation has developed, the pet and where the pet is allowed to frequent needs to be treated. Inside, this will include frequent vacuuming of the carpet as well as sprays. Outside, sprays designed to target the flea larvae should be applied, especially where the pet may frequently run or nap. Insect control regulator type insecticides are usually more effective against the larvae. In short, just treating the landscape will not effectively manage flea issues. Our last group in this module are ticks. Unlike fleas, all tick stages are blood-sucking pests. In North America, we have three common species of ticks that can regularly occur in managed landscapes. These would be the American dog, Lone Star, and blacklegged ticks. The brown dog tick is more of a kennel pest and is a species that can complete its development entirely on one host, dogs. The other ticks require multiple hosts, and they can also transmit diseases to humans and domestic animals. The American dog tick and Lone Star ticks commonly transmit Rocky Mountain spotted fever across North America. The blacklegged tick is often called a deer tick, and this is a species that transmits Lyme disease from small rodents to humans and other animals. Most ticks need a minimum of 12 hours and usually more like 24 hours to attach and potentially transmit a disease. Therefore, body checks after being in a tick-infested area is an important method of disease avoidance. Our most important species are called the hard ticks because the unfed adults have a relatively hard body. Female ticks have the cephalothoracic shield covering only half of the body, while male ticks have this shield extended to the tip of the abdomen. The adult female ticks can expand the abdomen to hold a large amount of blood sucked from her host. This blood is converted to eggs after the tick drops from its host. Several thousand eggs can be produced by one female. This tick is a three-host tick. The larval ticks only have 3 pairs of legs, like most mites. Larval ticks feed on small rodents where they usually pick up a disease. After feeding, the larva drops from its host, molts into the nymphal stage, and now it must quest for another host, usually a larger mammal. This nymph feeds, drops from its host, and molts into the adult stage. Adult males and females have to find a third host. Males also need to locate a female on this third host for mating. Nymphs and adults can transmit disease that they have picked up as larvae. As you can see, this cycle is completed in 1 year, but may often take 2 years. The black-legged tick is fairly small. This prefers woodland sites and shady habitats. Like the American dog and Lone Star ticks, this tick requires 3 hosts to complete its life cycle. The first host is usually a small rodent like a mouse or vole or chipmunk, and this is where it can pick up the Lyme disease. The nymphs and adults feed on larger mammals, including dogs, deer, human, and livestock. Infected nymphs and adults can transmit Lyme disease to these animals. This tick is most active during the fall, winter, and spring months. It also takes 2 years to complete its development. It is not a normal landscape pest unless the landscape is located within or near woodlots. The best way to avoid tick-borne diseases is to avoid contact with infected ticks. This entails using repellents and regular checking when people are working or playing where ticks occur. Pets and domestic animals should be treated with flea and tick control products when they are also in tick-infested environments. Where Lyme disease is common, it is often recommended that small rodents be controlled through traps and baits. There is also a product that consists of a cardboard tube filled with cotton balls, and these cotton balls have been treated with an insecticide that kills tick larvae. Mice and chipmunks will pick up this cotton to line their nesting burrows, therefore self-treating themselves for ticks. Area sprays of lawns, especially the area where lawns and shrubs or taller grasses meet, are effective at reducing tick populations in and around managed landscapes.